Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We're going to discuss a Texas regulatory agency that has a tremendous impact on global energy production, energy supply, and energy pricing. And that is the Texas Railroad Commission. It has a tremendous impact on the global energy supply. And on today's show, we have the Texas Railroad Commissioner, one of the three Texas Railroad Commissioners, Wayne Christian. Wayne, how are you doing today?
Hey, honored to be with you, Chris. Really honored to be with you.
Good. Well, it's good to have you on here. I want to start off with just tell us, people don't know that the Railroad Commission even exists. What does the Railroad Commission do?
Railroad Commission represents the citizens of Texas. We're all three elected officials. There's 1,200 approximately employees. We have 16 offices statewide, and we control everything that God gave us underneath the ground: oil, gas, coal, uranium, lithium now, any mineral under the ground we represent. It's from the time it's in the ground, getting it out of the ground, piping it, trucking it, however it transports, till it gets to the production buyer, which is the refinery that turns it into whatever products there needs to be. So that's our job. We're in charge of the natural resources of the state of Texas.
Okay, and so what is your role with the Texas Railroad Commission?
Well, we run the commission, the three of us commissioners, technically. We're the commissioners that control that. We vote on permitting. The main job we do is permit, then we regulate, then we control the safety of it. We go out and inspect our 16 offices statewide. If there's some, we do regular inspections of all the drilling operations, production pipelines. We set the prices annually on natural gas across the state of Texas. So the retail rates that the major producers come to us and say, okay, we need to raise it, or we have this, that, and other. We have to look at the evidence, and we are the group that approves your natural gas prices in the state of Texas. So multiple jobs on that. The Railroad Commission is one of the oldest regulatory agency in the entire nation, perhaps the world. I think we're almost 150 years, about 148 years right now. We've been doing the regulation. Started out years ago, and we started after World War II. There was a real problem about oil and gas drilling that happened during World War II and provided all the oil for our troops in the Allied forces. And all of a sudden they had drilled in like Kilgore, Texas, and it was like every yard had an oil well. The streets were muddy. People were tripping over each other. No regulation whatsoever. And the legislature turned our name from the Railroad Commission, or at least not our name, but our duty from running the railroads, which we no longer do. We now run oil and gas, and we were basically the first environmental cleanup force. We went into Kilgore and these places and East Texas Field, and we cleaned up and started spacing the oil wells, cleaning up the work, regulating how you did things, inspecting. And so honestly, we were the first environmental group for oil and gas probably in the world. And that's what we've done to this day, is basically watch the production, do the permitting, and control oil and gas production in the state of Texas.
Okay, so so you first talked about it was it started out as a railroad regulatory body, correct?
Right.
And then it transformed into go ahead, please.
Yeah, it was the Railroad Commission, and then when we finally started doing oil and gas, it became such a major part of what we do that we gave up the railroads, and TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation, of course, Logic, does the railroads, and so we no longer do it. And I think there needs to be, and by the way, both of the last, I think, two review committees of the Texas legislature, when they review those agencies, they have recommended we change our name. But some in the legislature think the historical perspective is good. Been there, it's historical. I think it's a real danger to keep the name there, because most of the voters have no clue what we do. And when they go to the polls and see railroads, they kind of, shake their heads and say, well, I don't care. And that opens a danger for people like George Soros, the Bloombergs, and others that want to kill oil and gas production, to put candidates and potentially a winner in that seat. And then all of a sudden, Texas production, which if we were a nation, we'd be number 3 in the world in oil and gas production. And it's 40% of our state economy, all the rainy day fund, all the permanent school fund, all the higher education fund, and much of the overage we have in those sessions where we have extra money come from oil, gas, coal, uranium, and the power that we've been blessed by the good Lord to have in the city and the state of Texas like no other state.
Okay, so I want to just maybe possibly go over a couple of things again that you mentioned there, because I want everyone to understand the significance of the Railroad Commission so that they can understand this potential threat. And so if we can, please, again, what exactly does the Railroad Commission regulate today?
Well, for example, we let people either produce or not produce minerals under the ground. The minerals under the ground, when we produce them, pipe them to the refineries, becomes gasoline, oil, concrete, asphalt, medicine. And one of the big misunderstandings I think we have as a public is we keep hearing, well, if we change the price of oil, that affects the price of gasoline. True, but gasoline is only one of 97% of consumer products that come from oil and gas and coal. And so oil and gas are tremendously important, not just in that, but the production of electricity and, again, medicines. Just think if you didn't have medicine, how many people would die? And that's where you get from petroleum products are the basis for all, 97%. So it's kind of amazing when people start arguing this fact of, well, the price of oil, we need to change it because it'll do this, that, and other. They have no idea it's not just gasoline.
Okay, so we regulate everything under the ground, if I understand you correctly, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How significant is that? How significant is the natural resources that are underneath the state of Texas? How big of a natural resources mine do we have underneath our land?
Well, let's take for the world, for our nation. Probably the most significant times in history have been the world wars. World War I, we have letters in the National Petroleum Museum in Washington congratulating and thanking from the nations of Europe, the Ranger Field up in Eastland County by Fort Worth in that area, for the wave of oil that helped win World War I. World War II came along and Kilgore, Texas had the Big Inch and Little Inch pipeline. 80% of the oil went to our Allied forces that helped win World War II. I have a poster in my office of Winston Churchill, and the quote is, "It was a sea of oil from deep East Texas that won World War II." So that's significant in history. What would have been different had we not won those wars? And Texas is given a credit for the minerals, the oil and gas that helped win those two wars. Now we move to today. And today, the way I think you'll see that we're taking control with tariffs, with control, with energy, is a lot of it is the pricing of oil. Donald Trump said, drill, baby, drill. And he's using that to influence the entire world back to put America first in the world. Well, guess what? Right now today, if Texas, again, were a nation, we'd be number 3 in oil and gas production. So to the Trump administration, we are the dollar power that's allowing him to do much of the negotiations that thankfully he's doing for our country. And that's because, again, third time, World War I, Eastland, World War II, Kilgore, Texas. Now it's our World War III almost, if you say economically and socially and culturally across the world. Again, Texas with the Permian Basin is actually 3/4 of the production in our 4 or 5 states, but Texas by itself is half of the nation's oil supply and probably 40% of the natural gas supply and growing.
Okay, so we are half the nation's, and what was it again? Half the nation's,
half the oil,
half the oil,
40% of natural gas.
Okay, so Texas has a tremendous impact, not just on the state of Texas, not just on the country, but on the world from its production of natural resources.
Yes.
If I understand you correctly.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's very correct. In fact, I believe it was one of the major magazines said, I think it was Forbes magazine, said the Railroad Commission of Texas is beyond question the most important regulatory agency for oil and gas in the free world. And that has been historic, and I think we are that today. We have OPEC we compete with, but in the free world, the Railroad Commission of Texas is the one that controls more than any other place because we control again, half the America's oil, which is our bargaining tool.
That's very interesting. So it's almost as if the Texas Railroad Commission is a rival institution to OPEC.
Oh yeah, OPEC was created. The great Kent Hance, who is really a star, great guy. He was on the Railroad Commission back in the day that OPEC wanted to organize, and Kent went over, and it was the Railroad Commission of Texas, sadly, that they looked at to organize OPEC. And they used the example of the Railroad Commission of Texas to design their organization. They've done quite well, but they copied it after the Railroad Commission of Texas.
So it's very interesting. Okay, we have the Railroad Commission that plays this massive role in the world economy. We have the state of Texas that plays this incredible role in the production of natural resources for the world economy. At the same time, people don't even know this because we have the Railroad Commission named after a railroad. And that presents an obvious threat because the common person on the street really doesn't pay much attention to a railroad commission. Railroads were the transportation mode of the last century, not of the current century so much. And so I feel like it is a threat, the fact that this institution is maybe that's even on purpose. They keep that name. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's a threat. All the powerful players know what the Texas Railroad Commission does, but the average person doesn't, simply because it doesn't have the right name.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's a great threat. And because the voter doesn't know, and we are elected representatives, and we're the ones that do the permitting of getting the oil out of the ground or the gas out of the ground or whatever minerals are there, the votes on the Railroad Commission, if you put a George Soros, Al Gore, any of those followers on the Railroad Commission, and they run each time. They ran against me. They'll run against Jim Wright this election, and yet people do not know the importance of the Railroad Commission and perhaps won't pay attention. And so, if one of those people wins because Soros gave $5 million in one election, Bloomberg gave $3 million in another to the Railroad Commission Democratic candidate. And they're now running even Republicans in the primary with that George Soros support. So if they win, all of a sudden there's a vote against producing oil and gas in the state of Texas. Does that mean the oil and gas will go up or down? Down. It's not rocket science. And I remember what I was very concerned about. Some of the greatest people I know I met at Jonathan Saenz Texas Values Organization, and I met at their little reception they had up in Austin just prior to the session with the students of all the students across Texas that were going to be assisting representatives and senators in the Texas legislature. These are the best and brightest students that were there to be the assistants in the legislature this last session. And I asked them, what does the Texas Railroad Commission do? Not only did zero of those best students know, but none of their sponsors that was there knew what the Railroad Commission did. So I think it's a tremendous threat. But there are those in the Texas legislature that are just bent on keeping it for historical purposes, and their reply back is the people that need to know what the Railroad Commission is. I'm sorry, the voters do not, and they're the ones that need to know what the Railroad Commission does.
I understand the value of keeping our history in place, but it certainly seems like a threat.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned the Texas Permian Basin. Where is that, and does that area play a significant role in Texas's oil production?
Yes. Permian Basin is out in Midland, Texas is part of it. It stretches all the way and borders New Mexico down in that area. And it's a large area, mostly of deep west Texas. And it absolutely, in 2018, when I came into office, literally on the day after election, my wife and I were driving from Austin, Texas, back to our home in Center, Texas. And the Texas Oil and Gas Association were having their convention in Bastrop, Texas. So I said, well, let's pull in. I just won the election yesterday. Let's say hello to the oil and gas folks. So I went in. On the radio coming in, we were listening. Of course, we're good radio listeners, of course. And on the radio coming in, they announced that there was just a major find of oil in the Permian Basin in Midland, Texas, the largest find in history. And so it was neat the first day to walk in, the second day to the Texas Oil and Gas Association, says, well, guys, one day on the job, and I found the largest discovery of oil in the history of Texas. So what else can I do for you? So it's been kind of humorous over the years. But at that time, we started producing from the Permian Basin, and it expanded and expanded until now. It is the absolute number one basin on planet Earth. And it is responsible for a large part, the largest part of the national production of the United States.
And those numbers, again, I apologize for repeating this stuff, but I'm just trying to get it in my head. Texas produces 40% of the U.S. natural gas supply, 50% of the U.S. oil supply. And what are the numbers on the global markets?
Global markets, I don't know. The United States, if we were a nation, I know this, we were a nation, I've mentioned this.
If Texas was a nation.
If Texas were a nation, we'd be number 3 in the world in oil and gas production. That's strong. That's astounding. I mean, we are so blessed in Texas, and all this, I'm afraid we take far too much for granted. And if you don't continually watch and fight, you have a tendency, a threat to lose. And that's my concern.
So what are the threats to the Texas Railroad Commission?
Well, of course, politically, we talk about the voter not knowing, and we're losing control through a George Soros, Al Gore person on the Railroad Commission. That's a threat. The other part is the biggest folks fighting is the old story of politics: follow the money. And money is so important in what's going on in every ounce. So here you have the biggest pocket of money, and frankly, the big oil and gas companies, the big 7, are the major influencer of our politicians. They have 10 times the lobby of our independents, these smaller. And small isn't small in oil and gas. There are many large companies. But the 7 companies that have 90% of a lobby to our legislatures are the ones that, through their recommendations, make more of the energy policies. Well, frankly, you start looking who to these major corporations who are our friends, who do they represent? Their shareholders. Who are their shareholders? 90% of those are not citizens of the state of Texas. So when you look at that, you've got the energy policies, because of the strength of the big 7 international companies, are making most of the energy policies to our legislature in Texas. Now, who should be speaking to at the table? They have a place. But 90% of the production in the United States of oil comes from independent producers, not the big 7. 90% of the production and 95% of exploration. Big boys don't explore. They buy out producing fields and make profits off of that. They play Pac-Man. Okay, they go look for the lower hanging fruit and buy it and buy it and buy it and produce. But if you want to know who's doing the work, it's the Texas Panhandle Producers Association. It's the Texas Association of Tip Road, Texas Independent Producers Royalty Association, Texas Pipeline Association. All these independent groups across the state of Texas represent the less than international suppliers, the big 7. And they have a voice at the table, but sadly, they have less than 1 out of 10 lobbyists in Austin, and that's who gets the attention of our legislators, who are much more concerned. I've been there. I was a legislator for 16 years, okay? I was the first since Reconstruction in Deep East Texas. And I know you have a lot of issues as a legislator, so you turn to who you can when you can to get information, say, on oil and gas, because you're worried about the border, you're worried about the school system, you're worried about transportation, you're worried about all of these things, and don't have time to focus, as I do now as the railroad commissioner for oil and gas. I didn't have time to focus on that one issue. So when I have these lobbyists come in, and they're nice people, they're Texas good folks, wonderful friends, and have a legitimate seat. And when they tell me these things, I say, okay, that makes sense, I'll vote for that. But then 90% of the oil is coming from these independents, and they don't have the representation these big boys do. And in my world, I've seen as 8 years of your railroad commissioner, I believe we're making policy for non-citizens of Texas on energy in this state.
Okay, I'm gaining an understanding of that. So 90% of our production is from 90% is from independent producers.
That's
10%
correct.
is from 7 big companies, and the
Right.
7 big companies are the power players at the negotiation table, for lack of a better word, that have the lobbyists pull up the chairs to the lawmakers and the regulators and set the policy.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
and that's not they're friends. They are friends of ours, and they have a legitimate seat at the table. So that's not a evil thing. It's just that I'm afraid our legislators don't understand that they're not listening to the entire voice of oil and gas in the state of Texas when they make those policies. And I'm not saying all. We have a lot of good and bad and ugly in my family. But that's the same way in the legislative family. But by a large majority, the message being given is given by the minority, and most of that minority are representing non-citizens today in Texas. Give you a quick example. We don't regulate electricity. We do regulate the oil and gas and uranium that produces the electricity. So after Hurricane, was it Uri, that we were out of electricity for about 5 days in the state of Texas. After that was over with, I was honored to have an article that they published for me 1 month after that in the Wall Street Journal. Basically, what I told the Wall Street Journal is what happened in Texas is we put so much money and efforts in unreliable energy, we let the pilot light go out on reliable energy. Okay. Now, we were told by the big companies and all that if we deregulated the electric market, that they would decrease the cost of electricity because they would be looking to help the consumers. The consumers are taxpayers, our ratepayers. So we deregulated, the legislature did, electricity in the state several years back. Here comes Storm Uri. So after Storm Uri, the legislature passed, we needed the TERC, Texas Emergency Response Corps, to come in and have a committee and to come up with suggestions for the next legislature on how not to suffer from a Storm Uri again, to run out of electricity like that. So, and they commanded, I as chairman of the Railroad Commission at the time, be on that committee. So I met with the emergency response folks, making the plan for post-Uri of how to not let the electricity go off again like that. I would then come and recommend different stuff we need to go back to reliable energy. We need more coal production, more natural gas production, more uranium production. And the big companies, to our request, said, the big electric companies said, well, Commissioner, we'd love to do that, but our shareholders want the Green New Deal. Our shareholders want green energy. Our shareholders don't want oil, gas, and all producing, or gas and nuclear and all this. And so what that really told me, again, is these people who are not citizens of Texas are making the policies on electricity and oil and gas, because the corporations their members are by minority. Their shareholders don't own Texas. They're not in Texas. So I think it's a real problem for electricity. And the problem then, the result is, because since the 5 or 6 years since Uri, the logical thing, if wind and solar went to 0 and 5% during Uri, natural gas went to over half. What bailed us out was natural gas. So after I did the Wall Street Journal, more reliable energy, 6 years later, what has happened? We have retired coal generation in Texas. We built no new natural gas electric generators, no new nuclear, and we are now experiencing rolling blackouts because demand supply. If you have more citizens, that's more demand. Well, we're bringing in 1,000 plus a day from New York and California. We have increased population tremendously, which is more demand for electricity, but our reliable supply has decreased. So what have we done? Instead of building more gas and coal and nuclear generation, state of Texas, these past couple of years, has become #1 in the nation, not only in windmills, but #1 in solar panels. So we've increased unreliable energy and decreased reliable energy since Uri, which proved. Now, Einstein had a little phrase on that. If you see something and you keep doing the same thing over and over, thinking you're going to get a different result, you're an idiot. And I'm afraid the policy of the state of Texas on generation of electricity, which we don't do directly, we do the fuels that provide it, but I did have a seat at the table. But I think we're a bunch of idiots in our policies that we've followed since Storm Uri.
Hold that thought for 1 second. I want to give a shout out to our featured product, which is the X39 patch. The X39 patch. Maria in Fort Worth fell in the bathtub, hit her head on the back of the soap dish, the porcelain soap dish that comes out of the wall. In 2008, since that time, she has reoccurring headaches on a daily basis. She recently discovered the patch, the X39 patch. She put that on her body, and within 2 days, the headaches went away. This is a miraculous technology that RFK Jr. is now using. It's photolight therapy, so your body emits light, And what the patch does, it redirects the light. It reflects the light back into your body and stimulates your stem cells. Stem cells are what keep you young. Stem cells are what keep you healthy. When you hear about stem cell injections, athletes get injured on the field. They go to Tijuana. They pull stem cells out of aborted fetuses, really sick stuff, and they inject it in their body, and that fixes their injury so they can get back on the field. Well, we're not pulling anything out of aborted babies or anything like that. This is all natural. This is the X39 patch. It regenerates your existing stem cells. It brings them back to life. As for myself, I have, after 40 years old, you get extra pressure on your bladder. You have to go to the bathroom every other minute, go and pee constantly during the day. But with this X39 patch, it went away. It's amazing. I don't have that issue anymore. And men who wear this patch largely do not have that issue anymore. It keeps you. I also require a lot of caffeine on my days are long. I work hard. I drink a lot of caffeine, but not anymore because I take the X39 patch. The X39 patch. And to get a considerable discount, text the word Patriot to 330-606-2304 for the X39 patch. Okay, Wayne. So you were talking about a lot of the threats coming to us. Is there any viability? Is there any reason at all that we should be employing solar and wind?
No, not at all. I joined President Donald Trump in saying it's the biggest scam that we've seen perhaps in the entire world. Real quickly, you're sitting here looking at wind and solar, just fact. Let's take wind and solar are 5 and 6% of the entire world energy. They produce one product, electricity. Oil and coal and gas are 80% of world energy. And the idea, their whole concept is to do away with oil and gas and replace it with wind and solar. It's an insanity. You're going to take away all the 97%. You're going to take away medicine. You're going to take all the asphalt. You're going to take away lubricants. You're going to take away all these stuff you're taking away. And you're going to replace it with electric generation in the world. That's insanity. It just can't be done. And you can't, by the way, you can't have wind and solar without oil and gas. I mean, the fiberglass it's made from is from oil. You take the battery, all the plastics, the chemicals to have that put together. The lubricants for the wind blades to go around is oil. And it's just, they can't exist without oil and gas. You take an electric car, you take a Tesla, the fiberglass, the glass, all the body, everything that's in the thing comes from oil and gas, except the generation of power. And by the way, the power it comes from, by majority, comes from coal and natural gas. So they're really electric powered cars are all. And if you, interesting thing you see, if a Tesla breaks down on the road or an electric car, what do they send out to charge it back up? A gasoline truck, usually with a diesel powered electric generator to get them going again. So this is absolutely, you can't replace it with that. And what they've used, of course, the environmentalists have made a game of this ever since after Vietnam. And I joke, my generation is responsible for all this, totally. My generation, the baby boomers. It was a bunch of Vietnam draft dodging tenured professors that after the Vietnam War, started teaching our kids America was bad, oil and gas was horrible, it was harming the world, the environment was a bunch of junk. And the start of that argument was we were going to have an Arctic ice age. I mean, I can remember that, the Arctic ice age. Well, that didn't happen. Then we had global warming, and that didn't really happen. So they went to climate change, and the terminology kept developing, and their scientific computer-generated theories. And understand, a computer analysis is going to give you only what you put into it, right? And so if the people are biased that are putting the information in, then the information they get out. So all these big university professors on our taxpayer dollars came out with all these things. And Al Gore, for example, in his famous movie, I should have been dead long ago because I should have died at least 3 times, according to Al Gore's predictions. It's literally that stupid, and we believe this stuff. Right now, we've gone through flaring, and flaring has gone down in the state of Texas, not up. Methane, you heard that for a while. Instead of climate change, they're grabbing different gases, like flaring for gas, methane. Now the big deal is CO2, lower carbon future. We want a lower carbon future. Well, we're all no, we're not. Carbon dioxide is that's what we exhale, most of the CO2 is a fertilizer. You go into a plant place, the nursery, they feed carbon dioxide in there to keep the plants growing. And we've had more CO2 the last decade and a half. This is science than in past history. We've also had the largest greening the last 15 years in recorded history. 1/3 of the Sahara Desert is now in green. CO2, carbon dioxide, is a plant nutrient for moisture, is good for humans. And now we're paying big corporations that make $1 million a day a tax scam with this CO2 war. Why is that? Well, we pay the money out of our tax dollars, okay, which is our money. So we take it out of our tax dollars and we pay to build these plants to capture carbon for these big multi-billion-dollar corporations. And they take it and build it with our money. Then they get tax credits for capturing the carbon dioxide out of the air and sticking it in the ground. Okay? And so we give tax credits for that. So what they do is we, the taxpayers, are paying tax credits for all this carbon capture by the big multi-billion-dollar corporations. And over a while, they're going to build another plant that gets this carbon capture. Then they go sell the carbon credits to their neighbor producers that may not have this factory. And all of a sudden, what happens to the Texas and American people? The multi-billion-dollar oil companies are going to wind up paying less taxes. Guess who pays more? And what's it for? Carbon dioxide capture. Let me real quickly. The EPA has already told they want to take carbon dioxide and methane off the table, off EPA. So no longer is CO2 a legally dangerous substance. So we're sitting here paying billions of taxpayer dollars to capture a plant fertilizer. And let me give you the stats real quick on this. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and you can look this up, this ain't me talking, look it up on Google, 0.004% of the entire atmosphere is carbon dioxide. How much of that is man-made? 3 to 5%. So 3 to 5% of 0.004. And then the most articulate genius that I have ever seen in my political lifetime expelled this wisdom on national TV to Congress, Joe Biden. He said that the United States is 20% of the world environment. The rest of the world is 80. So we could do everything right. It would make no difference. End quote. Joe Biden. So get this. We're spending billions of dollars. You're buying products that we're a lower carbon. We're for a lower carbon future. We're going to lower our carbon footprint and all this stuff. And then these companies have windmills and solar panels all over everything. Okay. And we're sitting here costing our grandchildren and us billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars. Now, the big companies ask me, they say, well, Wayne, we really don't have to have it in the United States. We really want it, this lower carbon we're required in the international companies over in Europe. They require to buy our products that we say lower carbon, but the United States really doesn't. Okay, then why are we as American taxpayers paying billion-dollar corporations the incentive to lower their prices to Europe? Get this. Number one, shouldn't it be a cost of doing business over there to them instead of me and you, the taxpayer, paying billion-dollar corporations to capture CO2 so they can then sell at a lower cost over across the ocean? It's a tax scam. It is, and President Trump, thank God, has said that, and the EPA is moving to that. But you still hear all these folks, I invite people, if you hear any place you trade with start bragging it's a lower carbon product, go buy something else. I mean, this is a tax scam that's trapping our grandchildren into trillions of dollars debt, which, by the way, as an old banker and stock analyst, the biggest threat to the United States is our economy and the trillions of dollars of debt we're in. And all these big companies are sucking out trillions of dollars for their own well-being, and they should be paying this cost. If they want to do it, fine, go for it. Capture all the carbon you want to. I don't care. Just I shouldn't pay for it. It should be a cost of doing business to the corporations.
Wow. I want to ask you something along those lines. Can you explain the process of taking down a windmill?
Oh, the taking down a windmill, I don't know all the process. I just know, I know the economy to it. There's no banker, I count the cost. It's a lot to it. And of course, when they take it down, there's nowhere to put the spare parts. You've heard that a lot. They have to go out and bury them somewhere or figure out somewhere to carry the parts. There's nowhere they pollute the oceans. and all of this. So there's nowhere to put the parts and do it. But the average windmill, let's compare that to an oil derrick. Okay, let's say oil versus wind. Okay, a windmill, they put it up. There's more under the ground than there's above the ground to hold the darn things up. So you've destroyed. The Texas Parks and Wildlife chairman told me, he said, Christian, we have estimated, because their wind and solar, unlike oil and gas, are exempt from the poisonous gas and chemical law. They're exempt from the Endangered Species Act, so they can kill all the bald eagles they want to up there. Oil and gas can't. But he said from the chemicals they use to clean all those windmills, solar panels, it takes the land and makes it non-usable for any other purpose, agriculture, for at least 100 years. So they destroy land. They tried environmental friendly. Get this, they destroy the land for any production other than their wind and solar usage. Okay, and then for decades you're seeing that. So the cost of taking them down, number one, they last about 10, 15 years max. 10 to 15 years they last. It takes $1.25 million minimal to take one down. Okay, take $1.25 million, divide it by 10, you get the per annual use, or 15 at best. Okay, let's do an oil derrick. An oil derrick goes in there, it lasts 50 to 70 years producing. And take it down is around $25,000 to $30,000. Divide 30,000 over 70 years compared to 15 years over $1.25 million, and you get the only reason these windmills and solar panels exist in the world today is because we in Texas, and this is Texas Public Policy Foundation, the last over a couple of decades, we've spent over 20 to 30 billion Texas federal and state dollars and sent to our good friends in Red China to buy windmills, solar panels, and batteries to bring over here of our tax dollars, 25, $30 billion. And then we give them tax breaks in our counties and cities to go up there and destroy hundreds of acres of land. Now get me the logical connection on those dots.
Well, okay, so my question for you is this, is that, okay, so, you know, the question is why are we doing this? Why are we building these useless forms of energy? Why are we giving all these tax breaks to these large corporations? Is what we're doing this while at the same time China is just powering up its economy on nuclear power plants, right? Adding a record number of them. They're doing everything right in their economy. Am I right or wrong on that?
You're wrong on nuclear. It's coal. They literally do 75 coal plants a week in Red China. Got that? It's coal. It's the dirtiest form, and there are no filtration systems like we demand in the United States. So here they are, and they are exempt from all of these acts and stuff nationwide, the Paris Accord, all of that they're exempt from, not the United States. And so here you are, the United States is 20% of the entire world atmosphere, okay? Boom. We are the cleanest industrialized nation on planet Earth, the cleanest on planet Earth. Red China, one of the dirtiest. So how the greenies want to fix it? They want to shut down the cleanest producer so that it can be taken the place by the dirtiest producer. This is the illogic in all this. And you're talking, you know, there is no logic in this sequence of what's going on with this environmental Green Deal. That's why our president this past week told the United Nations it was the biggest scam in modern world history was this environmental movement. And it is. And what's sad is our public has been duped by a bunch of university professors have taught all our kids that oil and gas is evil and wind and solar is the answer, this clean, real deal. Our politicians go around screaming environmental slogans like, we're for all the above energy. You ever heard that, folks, by somebody? We're not for all the above energy. We're for the best energy. We're for clean, plentiful, reliable, cheap energy, not wasteful and environmentally destructive and costly wind and solar energy. And yet we keep hearing this. And now we're having this discussion again. And I'll repeat myself. We want lower carbon. We're trying to lower our carbon footprint. We all want lower carbon. No, we don't. No, we don't. Carbon dioxide is good for humans. We exhale it. If you shut down all carbon, you kill all of us. That's humans and animals. You know, so this is the insanity, but we've been duped by media, an educational group, and basically by our politicians that, number one, either haven't taught us the truth if they know it, or number two, keep their mouth shut because they're getting big checks at campaign time.
Okay, so who's steering us off this cliff? Is it is it that those 7 oil companies that are largely dictating policy in the state of Texas?
Well, yes, they're the ones that visit with our legislators, and we make the policy mostly from their recommendations. Now, I hope that's turning around. The legislator, and this is not all the legislators, we have a lot of heroes in the legislature, Kevin Sparks and Mays Middleton, a lot of good folks that are very good. I can just name on and on good folks, but they don't have the majority. For example, in the Texas legislature, this is not New York, not California, this last session, there was a bill because wind and solar, when we tell ERCOT, when the oil and gas companies tell ERCOT they're going to produce X amount of electricity, and they wind up not producing the electricity when ERCOT needs it, they are penalized heavily for not producing the electricity they promised to produce, justifiably. Well, there was a bill by Senator Kevin Sparks and Jared Patterson in the House this last session that says wind and solar, when they promise electricity, they're penalized if they don't put it on when ERCOT tells them we need your electricity, just like oil and gas. It was defeated by Republican legislators. Why? Because we the people, now you talk about where the guilt is, we the people in their districts had windmills and solar panel industries, and their citizens of Texas wanted those Republican representatives to vote their local district, which was wind and solar industry. A lot of these big ranchers have windmills and are making the money off the deal. So everybody's making the money from the federal government trough. It's citizens too. And what we've got to understand as citizens is that, people say, well, it's such good money, Wayne. You had the chairman of Exxon and Occidental go to Donald Trump's hotel room a month before the election at a fundraiser in Houston, Texas. And the Exxon president says, we want to stay in the Paris Accord, Mr. Trump. And the Occidental president told him we wanted to not do away with all of the Inflation Reduction Act, which supports all this stuff, and its purpose is shut down. I guess the chairman of a company asked him to keep the Inflation Reduction Act because they're making lots of money off of it. Where's the money from? The taxpayer, towards our trillions of dollars debt to multi-billion-dollar corporations. And this is the cycle that keeps going. And
but
how
Trump
we
pulled us out, right?
I'm sorry?
Trump pulled us out, right?
Oh, Trump, no. To a large extent, yes. The Trump administration has taken us out of a lot of these deals. But the Trump administration has given permitting processes to these companies to keep capturing carbon in Texas. And so they have, at this point, provided them the legal authority to go and capture carbon and stick it in the ground. I'm sorry, then let me give you an example of why it just doesn't work. The largest carbon capture facility ever was Petronova in Houston, Texas. Me, Rick Perry was Energy Secretary, and Governor Abbott were down there cutting the ribbon. And their promises this time was that they were going to capture the carbon, put it in the ground, pipe it out, put it underneath the oil patch, and produce more oil and gas. Wonderful. They did it for 2 years and went bankrupt. Guess what? When the Inflation Reduction Act under Biden passed, opened back up. Petronova. Why? We pay for it. That is such an example. Now, let me tell you, there is a good use for CO2 for a use of it. They can pump part of it out there underneath the oil patch and they get more production. That's great. Why are we paying for it? That should be a cost paid by the oil companies as a cost of doing business, right? But no, we're capturing it, doing that. And then that doesn't justify sticking it in the ground forever in these big pits and just sealing it up, nor does it justify using it to decrease the price of competition in Europe.
Wow. Man, like so much information, and it just makes me have more questions. Okay, I want to jump back. Tell me about Belmead, Texas.
Belmead,
Yeah.
I think it's Belmead is the right name. It's a small little school. It's the richest school district in the state of Texas per capita. Small town outside of Beaumont, down that area. And it's a small little town, but it was the hub of where the pipelines seemed to almost naturally come together down there. It became a controlling factor of natural gas decades ago. And so oil is named West Texas Intermediate. WTI is the bidding price on the world oil for a barrel of oil, West Texas Intermediate. The price of natural gas is Belle Meade oil. And I think it's Belle Meade. I may have
On
the
the
wrong
world
name there.
markets, on the world markets, it's WTI,
Yeah,
West Texas
oil.
Intermediate,
That's
on the
oil.
world markets, not just in America.
Right. It's the world oil. And they also have, there's prices they sometimes use overseas too. But basically, WTI is the standard for the pricing of a barrel of oil, WTI, on the markets. And I think Belle Meade, I think it's the right name, Belle Meade is the price of natural gas on the markets. And so that's how much Texas has influenced gas and oil. Again, we were a nation, would be number 3. The price of oil and gas is set by, it's like kind of like the moon people. The first word set on the moon by man was Houston. So Texas is kind of leading in the name business.
One of the things you said Texas keeps being the king of minerals consistently. What do you mean by that?
Well, this past year, about 2 years, I was visited in my Northeast Texas office in Center, Texas, by a Canadian group and a good friend of mine, Eric Marone, who works in the Department of Energy up at Texan from Fort Worth. And he brought these folks into my office and said, we have a lithium production. Lithium is one of the rare minerals that we are trying to start producing instead of buying them all from China. I think people may be aware, Donald Trump said the rare earth metals are needed for all these new chips and all the electronics and artificial intelligence and Bitcoin and all this, more electricity, and it requires lithium and some other rare earth metals. Well, lithium, they had found in Arkansas, up north of East Texas, and we're getting lithium out of there. And they came down, this Canadian group says, hey, we have found that the vein goes down into Northeast Texas, and Northeast Texas may be one of the largest lithium finds in the world. And so I will be going out to Mount Vernon, Texas, Mount Pleasant, Texas, in a few weeks and speaking on the development of lithium there. And then I'll be coming back to my home in Joaquin, Texas. I mean, it's a little town about 4 miles from the Louisiana border in a little county called Shelby County. And they are going to build a $110 million lithium mine processing place there in Joaquin. Will provide millions of dollars for the school system, millions of dollars for that totally poor rural county. But it's lithium, and it's the new mineral that Texas, again, I say the good Lord gave us the most oil of any place in the world, gave us the most natural gas of any place in the world. Now we're sitting here with lithium. And lithium is a major find. We will be probably one of the world's top producers of the minerals of these rare earth metals.
What do you do with lithium? What can you do with it? What do you make out of it?
It makes batteries. It makes all these batteries and all these chips and all these different parts for the computer gizmos and the Bitcoin folks use all this. And it allows electricity and all these computer parts. And where we have become so dependent upon China for all this, that will give Texas, again, a major role in offsetting China, offsetting our enemies, and being able for the United States to have its own production of rare earth metals.
Very interesting. Wayne, I want to repeat back to you one of your quotes. Texas is Texas because we were given one of the largest deposits of, no, I'm sorry. Texas is Texas because we were given a largest deposit of minerals in any place in the world. What do you mean by that?
I mean, we have the largest field of oil right now. We did back in World War II, the East Texas Kilgore Field. So the East Texas field was the largest ever found. You know, Baytown, I think, was an original discovery down there. But then the largest field was East Texas during World War II. And now the Permian Basin in the state of Texas is the largest field for oil. Now you've got a combination of fields for natural gas. Natural gas you have all over the state of Texas. And basically one of the largest fields is in the Haynesville Shale, which is northeast Texas. You also have the Eagle Shale down in southeast Texas. But then there's other fields all over the state of Texas. Texas is just the gold mine for oil in the world. And we've got it so many places and it's so cheap. And a lot of people, and by the way, the thing that we are blessed with the most is coal, lithium. Okay, and lithium is kind of unfavorable now, not necessarily because the new technology has it very clean. You hear the word clean coal. Well, it is. We're not like China that just burns it and it smokes up in the air. We have all the industry of oil and gas has cleaned up the process So it's very environmentally friendly. But the trouble with lithium or coal, I mean, lignite or coal, lignite is so expensive to go in there and dig up, and then you have to bury it and redo the land after you're through and process it and haul it in trucks and stick it on trains and all this kind of stuff. Well, man, we got so much natural gas in the same part of Texas. You just stick a hole in the ground and up comes gas. So it's so much cheaper, and we have such a supply of natural gas that has made the production non-competitive for coal and lignite. So that's why just the dollars are just more expensive. But God's given us the most coal, natural gas, and oil in Texas.
Well, I think we're going to finish up there, and I think we're just going to drive this point home, which is that we are standing on a gold mine of natural resources that we are being prevented by political forces from completely leveraging and improving the quality of our lives. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, I believe the cost is exorbitant that we're paying. It could be much less if we weren't doing a whole lot of taxpayer dollars. I think probably it's the pricing is good, whatever, but I'm tired of the taxpayer paying the bill. I'm also tired of us getting unreliable and higher electric costs because everybody's so wind and solar happy because the federal government and the taxpayers are paying for the wind and solar. So it's a combination of higher prices, but it's just, yes, we need to better understand it, and the citizens need to. You're exactly right.
Great. Wayne, incredible hour. It's all in education for me. I'm apologize because I'm fumbling through it, but doing my best. So, but I appreciate it. It was an incredible hour, and I know I asked a lot of the same questions over and over again, but I do appreciate it.
Hey, can I close with one point? And this is political. It's all my fault, not yours. But Jim Wright is up for election as your railroad commissioner. Jim Wright. And folks, if we don't get behind him, George Soros and those people like Bloomberg will fund an opponent to try to put on the Railroad Commission and completely destroy oil and gas production in this state. So please vote Jim Wright and tell your neighbors for a railroad commissioner, state of Texas, in this next election.
Great. All right, Wayne, well, thank you very much and appreciate your time. And this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. And we will be back tomorrow night with one more hot topic. Have a great night.